Welcome to today's 10th post-pandemic conversation. I'm Marilyn Anthony, strategy professor in the Fox School of Business at Temple University and a member of the Fox Management Consulting Group. Today we are fortunate to be joined by Corinne O'Connell, CEO of the Philadelphia chapter of Habitat for Humanity. In 2019, some of you may recall, the Philadelphia Business Journal named Corinne one of the city's most admired CEOs. Hers has always been a challenging mission, made even more difficult now. Welcome, Corinne, and thanks for taking time out to speak with our listeners today.
I'm thrilled to be here. Wish we were in person, but this will work.
We're happy to have you in any way. So let's start off by kind of taking an historic look at Habitat for Humanity. In its long history, the organization has survived other crises. What have you and the nonprofit industry learned about survival strategies?
So I would say we all learned a pretty hard lesson in 2008 in the housing crisis. And that was one of a very long recovery and required to get really clear on mission and who we are. But I would say the difference between 2008 and now, sort of the acuteness of decisions right now. And, in 2008, there wasn't this close the door, send everybody home. Like it's so different. It's so different than 2008. But I would say, back then, I was grateful and I'm still, to be, aligned with an organization where, basic needs. So I see Glenn is on here, but much like Philabundance of roof overhead, food on the table. I do think the resilience of nonprofits who are in that basic needs space, that resonates with donors, that resonates with people when they think about giving and acting. And we certainly saw that in the housing recession and that our donors didn't drop off. I think it's too soon to tell where we are right now. But bigger picture, then and now, it does require just sort of that nimbleness and to have enough cash reserves to weather what's coming.
So what impact is the pandemic having on our most vulnerable neighbors and on the nonprofits who serve them? What have you seen so far?
So we have the unfortunate prize in Philadelphia and the region, and I really just hate that we have to bring this up every time, but we're the poorest of the large 10 cities. So Philadelphia before March 15th, too many Philadelphians were struggling. So 1 in 4 in Philadelphia before COVID had to make a decision every month of, am I paying rent or am I putting food on the table? 1 in 4 people. And what this virus has done is just decimated what little bit of a safety net was there and really highlighted, as I keep saying, it's, we've been told to stay home, right? Stay home, shelter in place. Well, that only works if the home is safe, warm, and dry. So to play that out in a few, scenarios of if you are, renting a bedroom, in somebody's house, along with 4 or 5 other people, how do you stay 6 feet apart and people coming and going? And so the number of people that are couch surfing and, in and out of shelters and the number of people that, May 1, and they're going to have to make the decision June 1. Am I paying rent this month or am I going to, the lines, Glenn has just chimed in to say Philabundance is getting a really strong response, which is phenomenal, but the number of food insecure people and housing insecure people has just been exacerbated. And I think the road ahead and the climb out of this is going to be a long time for a lot of people. What we're seeing thus far, I don't know how many people are familiar, so I apologize if this is a Habitat, we hold the mortgage, so the family buys the home and it's a 30-year mortgage. So in March and in April, we saw it was steady on people's ability to pay their mortgage. But as we're talking to people and as we're tracking on that data, what we anticipate and what they anticipate happening is once the unemployment relief, that COVID relief, dollars, those dry up. Again, we're going to have people who are unable to pay rent, unable to pay mortgages, et cetera, et cetera. So I wish I had a rosier picture to paint, in that, I wish it wasn't as bleak, but at the same time, it also calls to question and calls for really dramatic action when we think about how to do it differently. Because if we don't decide to do it differently and collectively do it differently, then the next time we're sent home, how much longer are we home? How many more people will we lose to the virus?
You're raising a really interesting observation about the universality of the need for safe housing, and also the fact that the scope of this pandemic, that it touches all of us in different ways, obviously, but the stay at home, everybody's supposed to stay at home.
Yeah.
The homeless or housing insecure population tends to be quite invisible to the average person. So do you feel that because we're all forced to be home, does that raise the perception of the importance of home, or are we so isolated that it becomes even less visible?
So a couple things come to mind. In Philadelphia, we have one of the highest home ownership rates of cities in the country, but it's a combination of elderly homeowners and low-income homeowners with housing stock that is 120 years old. Mm-hmm. And in our housing stock right now, 136,000 families own their home, but it needs a critical repair. So they are living in a home that probably has had a roof leaking for 5 or 6 years. They are living in a home where they just keep shutting the roof leaks into the second floor, into the kitchen. They just keep shutting doors into a smaller space and cooking on a hot plate in the living room. So again, we're juxtaposed with this stay home. Stay home, because if you stay home, you will be healthy. You will not get this virus. You will do your part. And yet people are not able to stay healthy in their homes. They weren't able to stay healthy in their homes before this virus, and it's just even more exacerbated since then. So that's my, as we think about health, as we think about our way out, certainly making those critical repairs, providing those critical repairs for people who are in owner-occupied homes will be really, really critical to all of our collective health. And I apologize, Marilyn, the first part of your question, I got two going on the 136,000. Ask me again, say it again.
Just the fact that everyone is being asked to stay home, do you think that is going to sensitize people to the importance of a safe home, or desensitize us?
Thank you. So I only have anecdotal data, but when the second week of March or third week of March, when essentially we had all been, everybody went home, we started Habitat, stepped into, I do a Tuesday morning Facebook Live. I had never done this before, but every Tuesday, and bringing the message of here's what we're doing, here's where we are, but really, no pun intended, hitting the nail on the head of safe, warm, and dry, and housing is medicine. And we've had over 35,000 people in the last 10 weeks watch the 5 minutes of me every Tuesday. Our virtual event was 3 weeks ago today. We had 1,461 people sign up to watch. And this was the other part I was blown away by. The average viewer stayed on and watched for 39 minutes. And so I do think there is an opportunity for us in the housing space, and that's the collective, right, in the region, all of the CDCs, those of us that have been working in this housing space. There is a real opportunity here, because I don't know that we're ever going to have this experience again. When we say shelter in place, when we say go home to be safe, that is going to be a shared experience, right? And when you say, hey, I can be sitting in my middle bedroom, a spare room with Wi-Fi, with my air conditioning on today, because it's so humid out, right? That I can do that and be safe and be here to do that, and that far too many people in Philadelphia cannot. that really begs us to look pretty hard at the situation when it comes to housing, when it comes to equity, when it comes to racial equity, et cetera.
So that leads us to your wish list. As a consequence of this experience, are there changes you foresee or you would like to see in policy, in regulation, and in the way nonprofits operate?
So I'll work my way backwards and I'll hopefully remember all parts of this question. So I do think the nonprofit sector, so I've been saying to our team, Habitat as we knew it, there's March 13th, Habitat as we knew it changed overnight. And all of it will happen differently, from how we physically sit in the office near one another, how we hold workshops in the community to talk about our programs, to how we have volunteers out on site. It has all changed overnight. And the sector itself, so there was a report done in, I think it was 2017, maybe 2018 by the Philadelphia Foundation. And it found that in the 5-county region, 40% of nonprofits did not have enough in the operating account to cover 2 months of payroll. And that was 2017. And the other stat that has always stayed with me, and it was a Philly magazine piece, but there's one nonprofit for every 200 residents in the region. And I am not in any way slamming those nonprofits and saying shaking my finger. However, in 2017, 40% of nonprofits didn't have 2 months of salary. I mean, it's a whole host of things of where's the duplication? How do we work better together? What does collaboration look like? How do we put aside the fair amount of ego and legacy that we've got to work together on the nonprofit side? And on the flip side, when it comes to public funding and private philanthropy, hey folks, yeah, we can all continue to lean on the bigs, the William Penns and the Barrs and so on down the list, but where are we as a collective, as a whole region and as a community? I think we're 32nd in the country when it comes to philanthropic giving. So there's a real lag there. There's the group on the front line that are trying to meet the need. We don't have enough dollars to do it. Do we need to have as many? Question mark. But we don't have enough dollars to be doing it.
That's a pretty big challenge that you're putting out there, and one, as you said, the 2017. If the numbers look that bad,
right?
Yeah.
And I just think this, and I can speak through the experience at Habitat. I have said to my board, I never want to experience March again, ever, or April. We furloughed people. We had to let people go. I let people go from our restore. I mean, I don't want to say it was. It's been smooth sailing, really hard choices so that our organization is open today, and it's open 6 months from now and 6 years from now, so that we can continue to serve families and open doors alongside other people. But that's required some really hard decisions around our expenses so that we can be stable. I want to add one more thing to your previous, the mayor, and I don't envy Mayor Kenny or his administration and his team. However, in the proposed budget, there is a dramatic cut to the Housing Trust Fund. And when we think about solutions, when we think about the road ahead, I'm going to come back and hit on safe, warm, and dry. And too many people, 136,000 people living in homes that they own, falling down around them. If we continue to strangle the Housing Trust Fund, then it's sort of, I feel like we're cutting off our nose to spite our face, thinking about solutions.